What was your first crap just got real moment where you thought you might actually die? I had autoimmune hemolytic anemia and was thinking how nice it was that everyone was visiting me in ICU, even relatives I'd not seen for years. Then I realized they were all coming because there was a high chance of me checking out. I think I was 6 at the time. One winter, shortly after my parents had gotten divorced, I was at my mom's apartment complex. There were some other little hooligans that I would hang out with, and so we went to play in a nearby creek. I don't really think anyone realized that there were any significantly deep portions of the creek, and thus didn't think much about us romping around down there. While apparently significantly deep is pretty subjective and 6-year-olds aren't that tall, we are standing on the ice over a particularly deep part, and the ice breaks from underneath me. I can still remember immediately realizing that my feet couldn't touch the bottom, and that I am in trouble. The cold sets in and I floundered for like 10-20 seconds. I looked to my friends, who just stood there in shock, or trying to passively murder me. I realize that they aren't going to help, so I start desperately clawing at the ice around me to try and get a grip on something. Eventually, I grab into a good-sized tree root that is exposed on the embankment and manage to pull myself out. I don't think I even said much to my friends. I just walked back to my mom's apartment and told her what happened. She put me in a warm shower immediately and made me some soup and grilled cheese. I don't tell that story too often, but man, when I remember it, I always kind of think I was a tough little crap. Worked as a bouncer. A guy high on drugs stabbed me and a colleague. Didn't notice it till after the adrenaline dispersed. Afterwards I panicked a lot. Yeah, but that guy stabbed you and you didn't even notice. He probably thought he was about to get a life-ending butt whooping. I was playing in a stream in 2nd grade and the current took me. I was bumping into rocks, getting flipped all over, gasping for air only to breath in more water until I was unconscious. My older brother and his friends fished me out, and when I woke up, I made my brother promise not to tell mom and dad because I thought I would get in trouble. They found out anyway because of my bruises, and I was genuinely surprised I didn't get in trouble. I don't think that they'd be mad at you, but happy that you're okay. Having dengue fever in a remote area, riding out the whole thing in a hut, alone. Every time I blacked out, I thought it was time. I feel ya. 105 days and cholera. I almost died. Lost 30 pounds in 8 hours. Nothing like laying in a tent dying. Luckily I came prepared and made it through. But holy crap, cholera will kill you in a matter of hours. When a guy grabbed me round the throat and pulled a knife on me. He mugged my phone, but I kept my ciggies and wallet, so the joke was on him really. Hopefully, it was a Samsung 7 and exploded in his face and now he's dead. When I was a small child, my neighbor friend had a party with a bounce house. It was quite lovely. Hours later I was wandering around, as children do, and saw they were deflating it. I thought it would be fun to crawl inside. I have a vague memory of a person telling me it was fine to do that, but in retrospect that makes no sense. The bounce house fell on me and was too heavy. I became trapped. I remember having trouble breathing and wondering if anyone would find me. I ended up wiggling out and didn't tell anyone what happened. Went swimming with my siblings when I was 9 and I wasn't a good swimmer. Kid pushed me into the deep end of the pool and I sunk. I tried to swim upwards but I didn't get anywhere. My sister finally noticed and dragged me to the edge where she berated me for being a dumbass by getting into the deep end. I ended up jumping into the shallow end, going to the kid that pushed me in and punched him. I got banned from the pool and went home with a sore throat where I lost my voice for 3 days. I didn't go into a pool for 3 years because I had nightmares. Sucker deserved that punch. This past spring, my siblings and I were driving to a concert. Our left front tire popped, and the car flipped over a guardrail, and just kept flipping. We landed upside down. When we hit the guardrail, my first thought was, well, I guess we're missing the concert. Thinking back, it definitely should have been more along the lines of, well crap, we're gonna die. But the logic just didn't click in the moment. Right after the car stopped, that's when I thought, wow, I could have died right then. It's funny what we think of in that moment. My family spun out on some black ice on a bridge and almost slid off the bridge, and in that moment all I could think was, I won't be able to finish the chapter in my book. That sucks. When I was 20, I woke up one morning with chest pains and an incapacity to take anything except shallow breaths. Everything else in my body was working normally, so I thought I had merely caught the cold. The guy who sat behind me in my class had 1 ER visit later. Turns out I had blood clots in my lungs. I was at Ocean City, NJ, enjoying a weekend with my family. My sister and I swam out not too far but enough that the water reached my hips. I'm 5 feet 11. The waves weren't particularly huge at this time, but I forgot about the riptide. My sister went back and I was alone, but the riptides got stronger and started pulling me deeper into the ocean. I hadn't realized it until my feet couldn't touch the bottom. The waves kept crashing over my head again and again and I couldn't breathe for a while. I started swimming as hard as I could but it wasn't working and I kept going further in. In my head, the only thought running through was no one's here to rescue you. You're going to die if you don't swim now. So I somehow remembered to swim parallel to the shore and made it somewhere far away from my family. Thank YMCA swim instructors. I had a seizure behind the wheel and flipped my car, or so I'm told. I woke up in the back of an ambulance and the paramedic was like, yeah, you were in a car accident. How you feeling? And I felt fine. He said, that's good. Your car is totaled and we had to lift you through the passenger side, so you must have someone watching over you. You're very lucky. You could say it was a guardian angel. I was maybe 7 and I was jumping on a cracked manhole cover and it broke. I fell but managed to stand on some sort of stone and didn't fall all the way. Stand on some sort of stone and didn't fall all the way. The manholes in my neighborhood are 8 feet deep with a sewer pipe at the bottom. That stone was probably the floor. During a snowstorm, spinning out on the freeway, coming to a stop in the middle lane and facing oncoming traffic. Luckily the drivers surrounding me were good drivers and hit the brakes, switched lanes in time. Shook me up for a few days. I convinced my parents to pay for a 1-hour Waverunner rental for my brother and me when the water was extremely choppy. So I'm driving, and the water is just brutal. We're jumping all over the place. Mind you, this was only our second time ever on a Waverunner. Eventually I get going way too fast. What 19-year-old isn't invincible, right? I start to lose control and next thing I know my brother and I go flying off the thing at the same time. He ends up 20 feet out. Since I was driving I went straight up and came straight down on top of the Waverunner, breaking my ankle. So here I am with a broken ankle. The Waverunner drifting farther and farther away while the key is on my life jacket, and water crashing over my head and in my face relentlessly. If I hadn't had a life jacket I would have died for sure. As it was I barely made it out alive. I was drowning due to the waves and undertow. I desperately and decidedly made my way back to the Waverunner, which was 20 feet out at this point, swimming with 1 foot and arms limited by the jacket. I was drinking tons of water and nearly sobbing at this point. I just knew I was going to drown. My brother pulled me up, having no idea what had happened. I gave him the key and told him to take me back. I hobbled onto shore and wound up straight in the hospital. I live on a large lake, and I see stuff like this happen all the time. Rental places give someone with little water boat experience and let them go wild. They then don't know the rules of the water, their limits, or the watercraft's limits and end up getting hurt or killed. You got unlucky that you landed and broke your ankle, but it definitely could have been worse. Probably the time I got shot while being robbed. I've been robbed at gunpoint before, 3 times actually, and have been shot at, but that thought never really crossed my mind until the day I was shot point blank in the stomach. Geez dude, you need to move or change your lifestyle or something. Felt something move by my foot while driving on the freeway. It was a goddamn rattlesnake that crawled in near the pedals. Almost crashed and died. I managed to pull over and run down the side of the freeway, near the barriers, not blatant traffic stopping, like a baby back bee before calling for help. Had a pillow fight with a friend when I was about 6 or 7. Somehow she managed to push a pillow in my face and sit on it. I told her I couldn't breathe and tried to struggle free and then everything went black. When I came to she was crying and really afraid she'd hurt me, but I was just so thankful that that wasn't it for me that I wasn't mad at all. Swallowing felt uncomfortable for a few days, though. Kinda makes you think about all the things that can go wrong when kids play. Scary that. When I was about 5, I was almost kidnapped. I didn't really care about that at that moment, but it gets scarier when I think about it nowadays. I was on the BART, metro subway in the San Francisco area, and a guy in my carriage, a big tall strong fellow, started getting aggressive with some other guy. He got all up in his face, some threats, some shoving. Everyone is inching away from the scuffle. I really hate to be here for what's about to happen, I thought, but it was mostly an uncomfortable annoyance. Then he takes his shirt off and puts up fists. He starts looking around the car, saying, "I'ma kill you, I'ma kill you, I'ma kill everyone in here. Please don't start this fight, guy. Please no, please no, please no." I doubt he'd actually kill anyone, but there would be blood and it would be scary. It was the longest segment in the entire BART system. We were going beneath the bay itself, and since it's underground, there is no cell service. I thought it couldn't get worse. I have a gun in my bag. I have a gun in my bag and I'm going to kill all of you. That was the moment. Now it isn't just a crappy situation that could end in injuries. It's the next big mass shooting news story and I'm right here. These might be your last few minutes, I told myself. My past didn't flash before my eyes. I could only think about my future. The future, which wouldn't even be mine, because I would be dead. We then remembered that you can move between cars on the BART, and immediately cut through the other bystanders to reach the double doors leading to the next compartment and strode in swiftly, back to that car, through the next set of doors, until we were several cars away. The other passengers began to follow us, and TBH I felt like a bit of a hero for leading the way. When we finally reached the next stop, I wasn't sure if it would be safer to stay in case he was getting out, or vice versa, so I hovered at the door, peering out. With a great clang and yell, the psycho guy hurled a bicycle out of the train so hard it must have crumpled. In a split second the BART police were there. Someone must have tipped them off. Later I saw that there was an emergency phone in each car and felt like an idiot for not noticing. I remembered wishing there was one, but I'm honestly not sure whether I even looked for one. Once we got to our hotel later I told the receptionist what had happened. He laughed a little and said, "First time in Oakland? My metro system is also named BART." I went tubing with my sister, fiance, and a few other friends. We had our tubes all tied together so we were facing each other in a circle. At one point the water was moving quickly and ended up scraping us past a branch. My sister's friend was convinced their tube was popped and deflating and she panicked. She jumped onto my tube and we both fell into the water. This is when I realized crap was getting real. Our tube went under the rest of them and a chain reaction caused the rest of the people to go overboard. A couple people were tangled in the ropes while the rest were being washed downstream, getting smashed into rocks. My friends managed to get out of the ropes and our whole rig got washed away. We all managed to get our footing and proceeded to inch towards the shore. The water was almost chest deep and the current was strong, so it took all I had to lean into the current and not get dragged away. We ended up on a sandbar where we assessed our wounds and made sure we were all accounted for. No broken bones, a few bad cuts and bumped heads. We started to walk downstream, not sure how we were going to get back to our vehicles, when we heard Punjabi music in the distance. We stumble upon a group of young Indians who had stopped for lunch. We look in the water and lo and behold, there is our damaged tube rig floating beside theirs. A guy looked up and said, "We have been expecting you. We ate lunch with them and they helped us repair our rig." My sister's tube was not popped. We floated the rest of the way with our new friends and we never saw them again. Love the Indians, they're expecting you. Hey guys, someone else lost their tubes. Let's set out some more curry and have a fun lunch. So me and my family, except mom wasn't there, were out swimming in a river one day. It was all in all a pretty good day. The dog had a blast playing in the river for the first time. By this point he is exhausted and can barely stay afloat but refused to leave. Not the point. Everyone is heading back to Sandbar to call it a day, except my littlest bro who is straggling behind a bit. And all of a sudden he starts yelling. My father and I swam out as fast as we could to grab him, and right when he goes under completely I'm able to grab him. Then we realized none of us could touch ground. He was only about 10 feet past where we were all at a second ago, so we were surprised how deep the drop off was. Also my dad and I are both really crappy swimmers. I pass my bro off to my padre and we try swimming back to before the drop off before we realize how far the current took us. At this point I get separated from the other two, and they are almost to another sandbar that I would not be able to fight the current to get to. I finally got to a third sandbar about 100 feet downriver. That was exhausting and scary as heck. My sister thought she was gonna watch all three of us go that day. She was staying back with my other bro and the dog. I went to lunch with a guy I met on a dating website, and to make a long story short, it was very uncomfortable and I was getting serious bad vibes. During lunch we'd been talking about this band that he was in, so he decided that he wanted to play me some of his music. I didn't feel like I could gracefully exit the situation at this point, so I got into his car and we started driving to his apartment to get his guitar. As a woman in my early 20s, there have been a lot of times when I've done things that I knew were dangerous or just generally a bad idea, like going places alone at night, going into an unfamiliar city by myself, getting into a car with a guy I don't really know, etc. And when you do these things, there's always a huge part of your brain that's convinced nothing really bad could ever happen to you. As we pulled into the alley behind a taco shop, that part of my brain noped the frick out and I started mildly panicking. This guy is definitely going to murder me. I've made a lot of bad decisions that have led me to this place, and now he's going to kill me. We ended up in the parking lot of his apartment, and he went inside to get the guitar. I was sitting in the car, wondering if I could make a run for it before he got back. Not really. It was a very open area and I wouldn't have been able to hide, doing all kinds of anxiety math and looking for an exit before he made it back to the car. When I was convinced he would open the door and sure it turns out that he did not. He just took me to a park and played some unbelievably bad music for 40 minutes and I never saw him again after that. Honestly, I'd rather be murdered than sit through 40 minutes of horrible music. I was transporting a juvenile inmate to jail and he came over the seat and choked me out with his handcuffs. Fought like crazy but I was trapped in the seat by my seatbelt and, obviously, the cuffs around my neck. Passed out and lost control of the vehicle. Blew through a heavily traveled intersection and ended up in a field. I have come to believe magic is the only reason I lived through all of that. There were multiple opportunities for my demise to happen during that incident. My mom and I were driving home from a college visit when someone else's car turned directly into our SUV. It hit on my mom's side. I remember my mom saying, "Oh my gosh, super fast." Then the next thing I knew, we were upside down. I remember thinking, we're in a car accident. The car is flipping. I'm okay. So mom must be dead. The car flipped 2 times, landed upside down, and slid about 100 feet. My mom and I both walked away with only seatbelt bruising and some injuries from all the glass flying around. It was honestly a miracle. No, it was safety equipment doing its job. At work, at a distribution center a few years ago, I was the smallest person, so it was my duty to climb into the stuff crushing machine belt to clear a jam. It turned on right after I finished digging the cardboard and tape and crap out. I was out of there as fast as one can hand crawl backwards. Osha would have a shit fit reading this. I was going out for some food with a buddy of mine and we went to Burger King. I had a double cheeseburger if you are interested, and we walk back out to his car and suddenly around 5 guys walk onto the parking lot. My buddy immediately looks down and starts walking faster. One of the guy yells something along the lines of "what the frick," and the guys come onto us. I'm not necessarily somebody who backs down from a fight, but I really wasn't prepared for that crap. They reach us before we can get in the car, circle us in front of his car, and the one guy asks my buddy what the frick he thinks he's doing out here and when he is going to pay him. Then he looks at me and asks who this fuckboy is. One of the guys carried a gun, so I wasn't really into giving a smart butt answer. I actually just told them how I was just here with him for food and don't know what the frick is happening right now. The presumed head honcho of the group takes a good look into my eyes and says, "Alright, get your butt out of here." I didn't really know if I should abandon my friend, but I wasn't going to get killed or beaten up because he was a cheap sob, so I thanked him and just walked away. My buddy got beaten the crap out of him, and I don't have much to do with him anymore. But hey, frick you man, bringing me in a situation like that. I think you did the right thing. About a month ago I was in a car accident with my dad. We were driving on the motorway to drop me at uni. The rubber on one of the back tires came off and got caught under the car. Dad lost control. We hit a car. They had whiplash and then proceeded to spin several times and hit at least 2 trees. I honestly thought I was going to die and I walked away with a perforated eardrum and whiplash. My dad is still in a coma. I'm terribly sorry. Went to a party with a friend. The owner of the house flipped his crap when he thought someone stole his drugs. I was the only person that he didn't know, so I instantly got blamed and he pulled a gun on me. I'm just standing there like UHH. I don't do drugs. He later realized he just forgot where he put them and apologized profusely. We're still friends to this day. Good times. Typical. He forgot where he put them. When I was backpacking through Africa and got abducted in Dar es Salaam by a local thug and 2 of his machete carrying psychos. One of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I know a guy who was abducted in a van in East Africa a similar way. They drove him around to different ATMs asking for more and more money. He didn't have much to begin with but ended up giving a little at one, then entering the codes wrong at the next one so his account got locked. They ditched him on the edge of some town and he got back okay. About 4 weeks ago when I went from having a benign brain tumor that was supposed to be easily treatable to being a GBM4 that escalated quickly. Heading into a car crash with no time to brake. I remember locking eyes with the guy in the other car and thinking one of us was about to die. Seat belts are the freaking best. I would have gone flying across the road if it wasn't for one. We both managed to walk away from it with a couple sore necks and one bruised head. I was 12 at the time and at a park by myself. This older guy, mid-20s, comes over to me and talks to me. He eventually drags me to a secluded wooded area to rape me. As he is pulling down my pants I keep fighting him, telling him no, until finally I tell him I have AIDS over and over again, continuing to fight him. I was watching his face when it finally dawned on him. For a moment I thought I was not going to survive this, but he just stopped. He apologized. I ran. Living on the streets was rough and I survived many stupid situations, but that one person and situation has always stood out the most. And that's the quickest thinking I've ever heard of. Glad you survived. This past January, I had gone out for drinks with friends. The last thing I remember was reaching to hug a friend. Next morning, I woke up in intense, embedded pain, unable to turn my head. I propped myself up on one arm, stood up and saw the friend I had hugged the night before, laying in my bed. He had brought me home and stayed with me through the night to make sure I was okay. I told him I think I need to go to the hospital. I can't turn my head. I asked him what happened and he told me I had fallen at the pub. He told me he asked me if I had wanted to go to the but apparently I had refused. My car was still at the pub from the night before, and despite the excruciating pain and confusion, I had my friend take me to my car so I could drive myself to the I was thinking I just had a bad concussion. I made it to the It was oddly empty. They saw me right away. I was in and out of consciousness. You know how they ask, rate your pain level is 110? I would answer 10 and then I'd be out. I woke up being taped to a hardboard. They were transferring me to the state hospital. I had a concussion. Yes. My skull and C2 had fractured. 2. The hospital had no neurosurgery unit and were transferring me in case I needed emergency surgery. Overhearing them call my father, who was out of state at the time, being alone there not knowing what was going to happen, knowing I had zero control. I cried. Not hysterical, just tears flowing down my face. I held a nurse's hand for as long as I could. I managed to shoot a text to a very dear friend. I asked if he could come and be with me. He said he couldn't get out of work, which I'll laugh now as I type that because that is so him. Once I got to the state hospital, and morphine had been readily flowing, I called my sister. I told her if I ended up needing to have surgery, if I didn't come out of it, to make sure she pulled the plug. Being a Jehovah's Witness, she was horrified. I called my ex. We were separated at the time, which did nothing for the head pain. I stared up at the ceiling. I was in disbelief that I might be going out like this. I've battled depression most of my life and have previously attempted suicide. So to be there in the hospital, like that, after wanting to take my own life, now my life was about to get taken from me. Life is strange. Yeah, that was the moment I thought it was over. P.S. Sorry if this was long and freaking boring. I've forgotten what the exact question of the post was, but I think it was something like, what was your biggest oh frick it's over moment? My short-term memory has suffered most from the head injury. I am currently in speech therapy to regain it. It will be 1 year on the 21st of January 2017. Whoa, best with all this. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.